Hey guys, welcome to this week's video. We're going to be talking with Julie from Accessibility Resources. She's going to tell us a little bit about how they help out students with physical and academic disabilities on campus.
Julie Snow, I'm the Director in Accessibility Resources, and I'm also Director of ADA Compliance for the university. And we work with students, visitors, guests, anybody that has a disability that comes to the university. They're encouraged to come through our office if they need accommodation of any kind. University, when a student is admitted to the university, if they have a disability of any kind, they are encouraged to come through our office, and we meet with them initially. They provide documentation of their disability, how that impacts their ability to be a student, and then we develop an accommodation plan that lists what type of accommodations the student will need, whether it's in the classroom, in the res halls, on campus to participate in events or activities, and that accommodation plan then follows them as long as they're a student here. That's the first step, to determine what accommodations they need, and then our role is to help coordinate those accommodations along the way. We have over 650 students registered with us, and they represent a variety of disability areas. So we have many students who are determined to have a learning disability, and so their accommodations are going to be in the academic arena. We have students with chronic health conditions, hearing impairment, vision impairment, mobility impairments. A growing group of students that are registered with us are students that have mental health diagnoses that can impact their studies. And so every student's needs are going to be different, and no two students with even the same diagnosis are going to have the same needs. And so we meet with each student individually. That's kind of a hallmark of what we do, is that we do work with students on a case-by-case basis, so we don't have kind of sweeping accommodations for groups of students. Academic accommodations is probably the bulk of what we do in our office, and so students that, if their disability, whether it's a health condition or a mental health condition or a hearing impairment, if it impacts their ability to take exams in the hustle bustle of a classroom, some students, if their disability warrants it, we can authorize them to have extra time on their exams. Time and a half is kind of the standard. Some students need to just take their exams in a less distracting environment, so we provide smaller testing rooms. Some students use Kurzweil or a screen reading software if their disability is in the area of their reading, whether it's actually reading the word or seeing the word. And so every student's testing accommodations may be different. And not all students registered with us are eligible for that. It always comes back to what barrier does their disability present. In that accommodation writing process that we do initially, we do have to kind of connect the dots. And so the student's disability, via the documentation and conversations with the student, have to demonstrate that extra time or distraction-reduced environment is needed in order for the student to be able to access their exams correctly. And so students that feels, yeah, I could really use extra time, or I get really nervous during exams, we can't just authorize all students to have these accommodations. It does have to be related to their disability. We're guided by the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that is a piece of legislation that indicates we have to make sure that our institution, curriculum, facilities, activities, events, policies are accessible to individuals with disabilities. So this is kind of our driving force here. If a student has a disability that presents a barrier to whatever they're trying to do, we need to try and find an accommodation to ensure that the student has access to what they want to do. A pretty common accommodation for lots of different reasons is note-taking support. So if a student impacts their ability to get a clear set of notes, whether it's to hear the lecture, to write quickly, to process information quickly, to maintain focus and attention on the lecture long enough to get notes, if their disability impacts any of those areas, we can provide support in the form of providing a note taker. And the student that needs it submits a request each semester, we then work with a faculty member to recruit another student in the same class and section to provide a copy of their notes. Some students, if their disability is in reading, for example, they may get their textbooks in an audio version. And so we get, they again submit their requests each semester to us, and then we contact the publisher of that textbook and get an e-text delivered. So another area we get involved in, students that need accommodations in the res halls, if they're moving to campus and they need a certain type of room or certain accommodations in the restrooms or whatever, those students are referred through our office as well. And again, I kind of take the lead on that, and so I meet with a student, again, look for documentation. It's a little different format. It looks at what kind of physical housing accommodations are needed. And then I work with Res Life and make a recommendation to the Res Life staff, and they kind of make the accommodation happen. So, well, I think one of the main ways to be helpful is to be respectful and think about how we view folks, individuals with disabilities. There can be a stigma. There's students that really are reluctant to come to us because of the stigma that's sometimes attached to disability. So anything you can do to dispel that it would be a huge help, I think.
If you have any questions about accessibility resources, our office is located in the basement of the library. Also, watch out for next week's video where we're going to talk about the elections and how to vote. So stay tuned for next week's Serendipitous Moment.